Hey you guys, what's happening? This is Bart and Eric from TST Industries. We are bringing you a new episode of TST Garage. In this episode, we'll be discussing the new performance package that we've put together for the Yamaha YZF R3. We're calling it the WORX pack, and it's comprised of an exhaust, ECU flash, funnels for the airbox, open airbox covers, and
we got the
air filter.
And the air injection system delete.
That's right. A couple really cool components all packaged up to not break the bank, but make a really significant bolt-on difference in the performance of your bike. In the last couple of years, we've been involved with racing on different circuits. We've used these bikes, other bikes, but this was the focal point. This was basically our big proving grounds. Small bike, not a lot of power, very low tech. What can we do with it? We had a lot of fun. We've built super sport versions. We've built a super bike version that you see here. If you caught our super bike build show, you know what I'm talking about. If not, please subscribe to our channel and you could catch those episodes there. We put in a lot of time and effort. We gained a lot of knowledge from this project, and now we're actually rolling all of that knowledge and experience into a parts package that is available to you guys, and it's all bolt-on. Are we excited?
We're pretty excited about it.
How much work did you put into this?
Quite a bit, but the results I think will speak for themselves.
That's right.
It's a pretty impressive package.
Yeah, so let me tell you about the goals that we had when we sat down and talked about the package that we want to develop, right? First and foremost, guys out there want to be competitive on their bike. They want to go out to the track, to a track day or a racing event, and they want to be competitive. That usually costs a lot of money and is problematic because you have to break into the motor, shave the head, do all this stuff. We wanted to make a package that is just bolt-on, and it makes a performance upgrade possible that previously was unavailable in just a bolt-on package. So that was our primary goal. To attain this goal, we had to break this down into a number of sub-goals. So let's run through them. We wanted to make a best bang for the buck sort of a package. We don't want to spend a lot of money, nobody does. We need money left over for track days and rubber. First and foremost, rubber, right?
Good tires.
Yeah, good tires. They cost a lot, they scrub off. So best bang for the buck was really at the top of the list.
We also wanted to make sure that we got, a good performance increase across the entire RPM range. We didn't want to just target going for peak numbers. We wanted to increase the entire performance across the RPM range and really increase the drivability of the bike.
All bolt-on, right?
Yeah, if you can turn a wrench, you can put this on. You don't have to crack open the engine. There's nothing too crazy. You can do it in your garage with a simple set of hand tools.
And completely reversible. If you choose to sell your bike, you take all this stuff off, it's back to stock, nobody has to know.
And a side effect to all this too is a pretty significant weight loss. With all the parts that we swapped out for our new components or just flat out removed, we took a pretty decent amount of weight off the bike that should hopefully be noticeable.
You take weight off, bike is more drivable, it goes into corners better, it accelerates better braking, all that stuff is affected. Now, ease of installation. This is kind of our MO. We develop parts and part packages that are easy to install, further made easier by our installation videos that take you step by step through the entire process with explanation and showing you each step in detail.
We almost forgot the most important goal. It sounds super cool.
Everybody loves motor sound. That's probably why we all got into it. Later on, you learn that going fast is pretty cool, but that sound really tickles you just right. And that's what enthuses you to go out there and do this. I mean, that's what did it to me when I was a kid. So I think a nicer sound characteristic or a more race bike-like sound characteristic is pretty important. All right, now we're just gonna run through our design approach so that you guys can understand the choices that we made in developing this package. The last couple of years, we've been racing these bikes in a couple different circuits, and we had pretty good results. We have one national championship, several track records, and a good number of podium finishes. I mean, it's pretty awesome. The one constant throughout all those years was the use of Yoshimura exhausts. These guys have been supplying us for a number of years. They've been supplying our race team, and subsequently we decided to carry these exhausts on our shelves for you guys to be able to get through us, and that was just a logical choice to go with Yoshimura exhaust for this package.
Yeah, these guys have got great quality control. Anytime we get something in from them, we know it's going to be, you know, absolute perfection. On top of everything else, there's a pretty significant weight loss when going to the full Yoshimura system compared to the OEM unit. You get rid of the catalytic converter, huge weight loss there. Plus, the Yoshimura system definitely makes more power. You shift the power into the upper RPM range a little bit. It's just a win-win situation.
It's a really good exhaust. We use these things on most of our race bikes that we build here. For this particular project, we welded 2 bungs to the header primaries on this exhaust so that we could separate the readings from the motor per cylinder. This enabled us to tune the bike more precisely per cylinder and be able to squeeze out a little bit of extra performance and smoothness out of the whole setup. It's impractical for us to weld on 2 bungs on every exhaust. This was just so that we can get our tuning done right. So each exhaust that will be coming in these WORX packs will only have the Yoshimura pre-mounted bung in the mid-pipe.
It also includes a narrowband sensor as well if you wanted to put your stock one back in. Yoshimura does provide caps for both the wideband and the narrowband.
We do flash out the narrowband, so that's kind of, you know, that's extra weight that you don't need in there. It doesn't work after our flash. These exhausts do come with a quiet insert. It doesn't really make them quiet, but in our tests on the dyno, we've seen a pattern that the quiet insert actually produces better results in these. So we do keep them in there. Guys that buy this WORX pack, I encourage you to keep that in there unless all you want to do is make noise. Then it's up to you.
For the WORX pack, we're using a MWR filter. We've used them on the race bikes for quite a while. Yeah, you've got one here. In our dyno test, the MWR filter was on par or outperformed, you know, any of the other filters that are on the market. They make it really easy for us to keep them in stock, so it's just a logical choice.
Yeah, we sold some other brands in the past, and these guys are just really easy to work with, and they have really good performance, so logical choice. Smog block off. This guy produced the smog block offs here, right here in this building. I think, who designed them, Brian?
Yeah, Brian did the design work on it. We went ahead and machined these out on one of our CNC machines here in-house, programmed it and manufactured it here, 100% made in the USA. The air injection system in a race setting isn't useful. All it does is helps with emissions. It injects air into the exhaust for better emissions. In a race setting, it's not needed. It's just extra weight. So,
it's heavy as heck on this bike.
Yeah,
all these different components, tubes and stuff. It looks like spaghetti in there.
Yeah, I think when we weighed it out, it was like 1 3/4 of weight loss.
We'll tell them later.
So we go ahead and provide you everything you need in the air injection delete to get rid of that whole system out of the bike.
Yeah, you don't need extra air going through there. If anything, if you ever take it to a dyno, you just have extra air going through the exhaust, throwing off the AFR reading when you're trying to tune. Not that you really would, because, you know, we provide you with everything here. So, airbox covers. For this portion of the package, we decided to source Yamaha OEM brand new covers. We designed a way to put these covers in one of our machines, and the result is basically open architecture of these covers, where on each side you have a much larger inlet. You also need to rip out the outer snorkel that also lets it breathe better. In all our dyno tests, we really just saw that the more air you could get to the filter and the funnels, the better it performs. Our best performance was actually without the airbox altogether.
Yeah, without the airbox altogether. We saw better numbers with no airbox at all. But that's not really practical.
That's not practical.
Not at all. And you know, you may ask, why do we go with modified covers instead of just having the customer cut open the airbox? Well, that goes back to the goals we had in mind.
Best bang for the buck, ease of installation, reversible, and man, we've seen some of these hack jobs. I don't know what people are using.
Yeah.
Just breaking it with a screwdriver or something.
Hacksaws or something, yeah. So this you know, this is a nice, high quality piece that is something you've come to know and expect from us here at TST.
That's right. All right, we're gonna move on to the TST velocity stacks now. And this is a topic that is so loaded. There's so much to say about it because so much work has gone into developing these. Eric is the engineer that was tasked with all the R&D and the production management for these components. So I'm gonna let him talk about what these are for, what they do, how they manage to do what they do.
So I guess a good place to start would be to talk about what velocity stacks do in general. They help tune an engine to perform a certain way in a certain RPM range.
So basically, cylinder volumetric efficiency is affected by these things.
Yeah, exactly that. So the OEM ones are rubber, and they're designed and manufactured a certain way to help reduce intake noise as part of emissions in other countries. But as a byproduct of them being manufactured out of rubber during your yeah, exactly.
Road vibration distorts them a little bit and the shape changes. How that plays into the actual output, we don't know, but we figured rigid mount would probably be a better way to go.
Yep. It's a pretty common thing, you know, a lot of the, like the R6 and the R1, they're made out of a more rigid plastic. A lot of vehicles have a more rigid design as well, so we thought why not stick with something that's a bit more rigid. It seems to be tried and tested on a lot of vehicles.
And just so people out there don't misunderstand, the OEM rubber velocity stacks, or funnels as they're called, they perform a similar job as ours do, right?
Yeah.
We just found more optimized parameters.
Yeah, we decided to, you know, we weren't so concerned about intake noise and meeting requirements set by the EPA or anything like that. So we designed these to have the best performance possible at the RPM range that we wanted to target, to go back to those goals and reach, you know, a really good broad power increase and increased drivability.
And how do we pick this RPM range that we were so interested in?
There's a lot that goes into it. You know, the effective cam duration, about how long the intake valve is actually open, the length of the intake track from the atmospheric pressure to the back
Speed
of the valve,
sound, blah, blah,
speed
blah,
of sound.
blah, blah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it.
This guy did so much research, he could write a book now. In fact,
I wouldn't call it a book, but there is so much information and so much R&D that went into making sure that we produced the best possible product that we could, that we decided to write a blog article on it, get as much of the R&D, the research, the dyno runs, the graphs, just get everything into a blog article for you guys to read if you're interested.
There's just too much fine detail to convey in this video. We're gonna lose viewers in like, you know, a couple minutes with this jargon. But those of you that are interested in the fine detail of what went into developing these stacks and other discoveries that we've made through the research, the blog will be available to you on the blog section of our website, tstindustries.com. So please see that there. I think there's one more thing to touch on this topic. We do have two different lengths. The OEMs are two different lengths. They are not the same length. Why did you choose to go with these lengths?
So, in a lot of our dyno testing and through some of the research we did, we found that while having a certain length will increase performance at a certain RPM, there is another RPM in which it will decrease performance. You lose some volumetric efficiency and you lose power.
You end up having a curve that looks like this instead of a nice smooth high drivability sort of a curve, right?
Exactly. The power delivery is not as smooth. Yeah, we tested, I don't know, probably a dozen different shapes, designs, lengths, mixing and matching, you know, just trying to gather as much data as we could to make sure we ended up at the best possible design we could. Oh, I almost forgot. There was so much interest in the design that we have done with the velocity stacks. The technical director of the FIM actually reached out to us and was interested in purchasing a set of our velocity stacks to do his own research and testing on, to see if they'd be willing to incorporate them into the World Supersport 300 racing category for the upcoming year. So if all goes well, hopefully we'll have some more TST parts on the world stage.
The OEM ECU programming is incapable of supplementing the appropriate amount of fuel in this scenario. So to take advantage of this entire package, it is an absolute must to retune the fuel delivery. Now, There's so many more capabilities that we have access to once we crack into the ECU.
Oh yeah, you can turn things on and off, you can make changes, and the amount of what you can do is pretty limitless, but you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, right. So put this thing on the dyno, we throw 2 AFR sensors in, we tuned it per cylinder, so each cylinder actually was tuned separately for fueling. Then we threw timing at it. What else did we do?
We increased the rev limiter.
We did. We wanted to raise the rev limiter to increase engine potential. If you look at area under the curve of output, that really extends what the whole bike can do beyond just increasing peak power. What else? We got rid of the stock O2 setup and the air injection system. Those are not necessary in a race setting.
Oh, the last one, probably something the racers would really appreciate is the fuel cut.
Yeah, so these bikes come with fuel cut on deceleration. Actually, most bikes nowadays probably do. And that creates a harsher engine braking symptom when you get off the gas. So we killed that. Now the bike is actually getting some fuel during deceleration. It'll enter corners better on brakes, and those scenarios will be much improved.
How many dyno runs do you think you put in trying to get this thing set up between the 2 different bikes?
Man, the 2 different bikes, the multiple times we did work on them, the original time we had this guy, actually the other street bike back in, I think cumulatively it's definitely over 1,000. I would say closer to 1,500.
I think we owe somebody a tire too.
Yeah, we definitely do. We flattened that thing across the top. Probably an oil change too. I mean, that's pretty much all we can say about the tune. Definitely made me mature as a tuner. These bikes come pretty weak. Once you start changing a lot of parameters on them, they require a lot of work to make them work smoothly. So I appreciate the opportunity to work on these things, and I appreciate the fact that people are still interested in racing little bikes, and I think we can push some boundaries here. The next thing we want to show is the 1st and 2nd generation bike on our dyno undergoing the proof run testing to show true apples to apples performance increase with and without the WORX package mounted on them. All of our tuning activity was done off camera. Once we arrived at the current revision of all the tuned parameters, it was then time to do comparison runs of the stock bike configuration versus WORX pack equipped configuration. There are many factors that affect dyno accuracy. Among them are tire pressure, condition of tire, chain, transmission, piston rings, and engine bearings, wheel balance, changing air density, and the list goes on. We set out to hold as many variables constant as within our control. This is why we decided to do all the before and after WORX runs on the bike without dismounting it from the dyno, and on the same day within the same hour. This approach guarantees that there is no inconsistency introduced from the bike being strapped in a bit different each time, and the atmospheric conditions do not have a chance to change too much. Using a bone stock bike also removes the chance of aftermarket components adulterating the results. We wanted the results to be as pure as possible. It is true that our dyno reads a bit high. That does not affect our validation technique, as we are looking at percentage change instead of raw numbers. That number is a better means for comparison of different motorcycles in various conditions. We had to get the bike to operating temperature before actually laying down the runs that we were going to consider in our data comparison. This involved a slow idle warm-up, followed by several full RPM sweep runs with the drum loaded, and then we periodically checked the temperature of the head and jugs to see if we were close to steady state. Then we did a bunch of pulls without load until we got to a point where the numbers and shapes of the curves were actually repeating on each run. Then it was time to get our baselines recorded. We did each gear for the purpose of representing the complete set of data and to enable our customers to make informed decisions on gearing and shift points for a particular situation. At the conclusion of the baseline test, we had to hustle to rebuild the bike with the WORX components real fast so that we can take advantage of very similar atmospheric conditions. Having torn an R3 down to its bones many times in my life and having prepped the bike and tools for easy disassembly, I was able to make the conversion in about 20 minutes. Then it was time to heat the bike back up, get it to temperature, and start recording the runs again. The rest of the experiment looked very similar to the baseline gathering step. The only thing that was different was the sound we were making and the results that we were seeing. It was so pleasing to see these results after the months of hard work and development that we've put into this project. Once we were finished with the first gen bike, we then had to repeat the validation on another bike. A logical choice for this part was the second gen bike. This one just happened to be barely broken in at just under 600 miles on the clock. The procedure was the same as the approach we took to the previous R3. The bodywork and components break down just a little bit different on this bike, but I was still able to get things swapped over in about the same time it took me for the first gen. The results we saw were pretty similar to those on the red bike, and the bike also sounded very good, just like first gen, which stands to reason because Yamaha did not alter the mechanicals of this R3 in the facelift they did for the 2019 model release. It will be interesting to see if we have similar results on the new MT-03 that is being released in the Americas for 2020, and we'll likely scoop one of these models up.
All right, now let's take a look at the results.
I know you guys probably want to see a bunch of dyno graphs, these peak horsepower numbers and all this other stuff. Don't worry, all the dyno runs will be available in the appendix like we talked about earlier. We're also going to put them on the blog on our website. You guys can look through them to your heart's content. But we really just wanted to highlight some of like the key findings that we took from this, like the most impressive things.
Yeah, there were certain runs in certain gears that were like really representative of what this package is capable of. So here in this section, that's what we're going to discuss, and the nitty-gritty information will be contained in those places Eric was mentioning. Let's run through some numbers. We used fifth gear as the representative set of runs. The first and second generation bike produced similar peak horsepower increase percentages. We do use percentage because dyno is a tuning tool. Really, the actual number corresponds only to that bike on that day. It's just, that's a long can of worms conversation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick to what we're talking about here. We saw a 15.5% horsepower gain at the peak for the first generation bike, and the second generation bike produced a similar amount. It was 15%.
We will go ahead and say that the second generation bike, it was relatively new, only had a couple hundred miles on it, so there is a possibility it was still breaking in a little bit.
True.
If we ever get the chance to have him back, we'll put it back on the dyno and see if we can beat those numbers.
That's right. Torque that was produced, we saw between 3 and 7% increase at the peak, depending on which gear and which bike we were looking at. It's safe to say you will see at least 3% increase. Area under the curve, which is really the engine potential, that was the real impressive gain right there.
Yeah, you want to talk about impressive. Those numbers caught us by surprise. We knew we were doing a good job, but I think we shocked even ourselves.
24% for horsepower increase.
Yeah,
pretty much for both bikes.
Yeah, pretty similar for both bikes. With the added RPM increase and the shift in the power up, we got a 24% increase in area under the curve from an OEM bike.
And 20% on the torque. That's huge.
Yeah, this is definitely something that you're going to notice the first time you get on the bike. It's the seat dyno is definitely going to register,
I'd say. We really wanted to introduce some other metrics, not just peak horsepower and area under the curve. What do people feel when they go ride the bike? Speed, right? So we need to talk about acceleration and top speed. We extended the rev limit, so we actually added the capacity for extra top speed. We went from 117 miles an hour before the bike cuts to 125.
Now understand, this is done on a dyno. There's no wind resistance. The front wheel's not turning. We're under some pretty ideal circumstances, but you have extra RPM available.
You catch a good draft behind a Ninja 400, you'll be right with them, right? Acceleration numbers, we actually couldn't go from stop to 60 and 100. It was impractical, so what we did was from 10 miles an hour to 60, we registered 4.1 seconds to get to that speed on the stock bike and 3.9 seconds with the WORX pack.
Not a huge change, but it's noticeable.
Yeah, when you look at the actual shift through all the gears chart that we have in the appendix, you'll see how much faster you get to speed. So if you were in a drag race, you'd be gone and the stock bike would be dusted.
Yeah, I think that becomes pretty apparent when you look at the roll we did from 10 to 100. Stock bike did it in about 10.5 seconds, just over 10.5 seconds, I think. And the full WORX bike was just over a full second faster to 100 miles an hour from a roll at 10, which is pretty impressive.
Now that's also have to consider that we're rolling just the inertia drum on the dyno.
Yep.
And we're not really considering the rider weight, wind resistance, bike weight, other conditions like that, friction, you know, all the phenomena that counteract all of this. But percentage-wise, it'll probably work out the same.
Yeah.
So pretty impressive. I had some fun with the numbers just to demonstrate the value that this package drives, right? We went for bang for the buck.
Yeah.
That's one of the goals. Let's talk about that. $105 per pound lost. Now that may seem a little steep until you take into consideration how much other things cost when you're trying to reduce weight. Take for instance these wheels, $2,400 retail, 10 pounds less than stock. That's $240 a pound.
Yeah.
This is pretty cheap considering all things, and the weight loss is really a byproduct of an entire package that improves everything else.
Yeah.
Also looked at the percentage increase in horsepower. That will set you back $76 per percent, $170 per percent of torque increase. Area under the curve was pretty cheap because we saw really big results there. We came in at just under $50 per horsepower percentage increase and $54 per torque percentage increase. Now top speed has increased, so every additional mile per hour at the top end will cost you just under 150 bucks.
All right.
Those are pretty nice figures.
Yeah, they're not
and that's
bad.
all in one piece together for you, forever owned by you.
Yeah, I mean, you compare that to something to like
MR12?
Yeah, MR12 race gas.
$126 a 5-gallon pail. You have to pour that stuff in all the time, and it gives you 2 horsepower. And it nukes your motor.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty stuff.
Smells good. You've seen a lot of motors pop because of that. But this stuff is yours forever. And it's really easy to install, right? Reversible.
Yeah, completely reversible. You know, as always, we have installation videos for you guys so you can walk through it step by step, you know, have a full installation guide when you go to do this.
So you don't have to pay a mechanic to do it. More money saved.
Yeah, go to a track day, buy some tires. And as always, like we mentioned earlier, as one of the big important goals, everything's reversible. You know, there's no permanent modifications. If you want to take everything off, play the installation video backwards.
One last goal was, and this is actually a really big one, improved drivability. Now, you start throwing on a bunch of parts and you may see peak horsepower increases, but this package aimed to improve the entire drivability, meaning power delivery is smooth. It doesn't roll off as fast as OEM, as the OEM bike does. We saw the horsepower peak out and roll off and fall on its face. Where was that? About 10,750?
Yeah, 10 and a half, 10,750.
Just under 11,000 RPMs. The bike just falls on its face and doesn't continue to pull. That causes you to have to shift earlier. Now, with the use of our package, we pull to 12,000 RPMs and there's a soft roll off over the next 1,000 RPMs to redline. Just a few horsepower less, very smooth. It enables you to shift much, much later and get back into that power after you shift. Same thing with torque. Torque curves look a little bit different, but everything's super smooth. I think it'll be very evident when you guys take a look at all our graphs in the appendix. That will be very, very evident. And we have 1st through 6th gear, and we have a whole bunch of data for you, so I hope you really do check that out. Overall, I'm really happy with all the results. So much hard work has gone into this package, and so much time was spent. And now it's really it's ready for people to enjoy. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you inspired interest in these machines, or if you already have one, hopefully you inspired some interest in this WORX pack. We worked very hard to make this for you guys, and I don't want to say I guarantee you'll enjoy it, but seeing how everybody who's already using it is enjoying it, I think it's pretty much proven technology.
Yeah, we're pretty confident.
All right, so thanks for watching. Please come to tstindustries.com, check out the blog for further data, and then if you want to order it, click that button. Let's go. Hopefully we'll see you at the racetrack.